Well, good morning if you're in Australia. Good evening if you're in North America. It's that time again. That's right. Friday morning, Thursday evening. It's time to talk some baseball. Talking Baseball Australia Live. We're on the air. Paul Morgan and I are coming your way in next. And 3, 2, 1. Let's roll the open.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
Well, welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. Dan Vaughn with you, my broadcast partner in crime, Paul Morgan. I'm bringing him up now. Let's bring him on the screen because we had such a good thing last week when we were spread across the globe. He was, of course, in Australia, and I was in Indiana. I'm inspired by him because he's got such a beautiful backdrop behind him there south of Perth. I had to come out my patio today here in North America. We're outside, or sort of. We're out and about. We're sort of out and about in the wilderness, aren't we?
Well, we sort of are. I'm down in Ingenum, which is just next to Yellingup, down in very much the heart of the Margaret River wine region, DV. So the couple of wineries around me at the moment, which may or may not have just had a few samples along the way in the last couple of days. But just down in just sort of Ingenum Beach, just kind of behind me, a few meters down, and Yellingup as well, just down the road. And Margaret River down one way, Dunsborough down one way. So it's I was thinking though, DV, yesterday, imagine if we could somehow, if we all made gazillions of dollars and we could just put a little baseball field in a winery down here or something like that, have a little festival.
I told you this last night that I kind of thought, and it always reminded me of a Cape Cod League atmosphere. Cape Cod League up in the Northeast, Massachusetts area. They've got these small town ballparks, community little ballparks, and that region reminds me of that region to a degree. And I got a Cape Cod League type thing. By the way, this following announcement is brought to you by Tourism Western Australia.
Yes.
As a North American, I can tell you, I've been all over Australia. I love the country, as Paul knows, and most know. But I can tell you, maybe one of the most memorable times that my family's had was our time in Margaret River. It's just a phenomenal place down there. It's a jewel of Australia. And I can't tell you how many times I've told folks in North America, man, you got to go west, young man. Go west. Again, that's brought to you by Tourism Western Australia and Dan Vaughn. So I got that off my chest there. I had to get that off my chest. Headlines. First off, the TV in the next room. Right now, they're in the 7th now. Houston's pouring on those poor Oakland Athletics. We're going to get to that in a moment because I want to still, while the show's on, to give you the great news from last night for Liam Hendriks. We're going to talk about that. The big conversation today, there was some things on Twitter today out of Auckland that's going to kind of take us. We're waiting for plan B, C, D. We're going to talk about more of that, and we're going to give you some insight on what we think's happening. And we also got a quote from Cam Vail about an hour ago, and he is going to unveil why they didn't announce anything this week. We're also going to talk about the hot stove and your questions and comments throughout the show. You want something to answer? Do you want to get some off your chest? Something you feel like sharing? Please do that. In our question of the week, and I think it's a pretty interesting one. Liam Hendriks' performance last night, is that the best Australian performance ever in Major League Baseball? That's my question. Okay, so with that, mate, ready to fire off and go? Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's a very interesting question of the week, DV. And I was just sitting here thinking, I think it might have to be. I can't imagine. No, obviously Lloyd
individual
rings, but
I'm talking about individual game performance. Now, Graham Lloyd has the long body of work. Dave Nielsen, the very long body of work. But I'm thinking about just in the spotlight, in the moment. The team was facing elimination last night, or yesterday afternoon, really, but morning over there. The Astros had gone up 2-0. Oakland's trying to stay alive, and he had to go out and pitch the old school save, a 3-inning save. Not just 3 batters, 3-inning save. And it was clutch. It kept the Athletics alive for another day. It looks like they're probably, by the time we get off the air here, they may be done and dusted.
Right.
But I think Luke Hughes' first home run, that was a pretty big deal. But I'm talking about the magnitude of the moment.
Yeah.
This has got to be it, mate, doesn't it?
Well, I think so. Facing elimination, 3 innings, such solid baseball, and and especially more for me off the back of such a phenomenal season. I mean, as we've said many times on the show, he's not just an Australian reliever anymore. He is one of the best relievers, if not almost the best reliever currently in baseball, which is phenomenal in itself. But it's it was great.
Runners at second and third for Houston.
Actually quite funny, DV. I was driving along down by the beach and yelling up, and they had the ball game.
Take ball 3,
a little pokey cafe.
And if you're Josh, smart hitter like Josh, been around a long
the
time,
last
you got to
inning
sell out
and
fastball,
a bit of
part of the zone. I know it's tough to lay off.
Last night was a big deal here.
You saw him able to do it there, but you got to
a lot of
believe
news
he's
coverage
coming
on
with
Channel
his
10
best
here.
pitch, and that's what
Nice
it is.
package. They actually interviewed Liam as well on the
hoping you
news
need a
as well
chance
last
on
night,
deck
which
here.
was great for the game.
Signs from Sean
An
Murphy,
interesting
Liam
point that
Hendricks.
Liam sort of had, he said,
Payoff pitch.
and the one thing I like the most is, paraphrasing here, but he basically said he loves the fact that he does really well because it gets the attention of Australia and Perth and the Australian Baseball League. So, at the heart, and he finished his interview by saying, he's really wants it. Like, one of his ultimate goals is to play for Australia in Olympics and also at the same time play for Australia in the World Baseball Classic. So, what I love about this guy so much is, we know last year he was down at the ballpark as well, shooting the breeze down at the Heat game.
Old school closer.
He's a major, and he's off to get his money now. He's a major player in the major leagues now, and a bunch of teams want to sign him. But he's still, he's still connected to where he comes from, and still connected to the bigger goal. And for him, the big goal is to get baseball on the map in Australia, and maybe sort of get it in parallels to cricket.
Yeah, he even mentioned too about it. If you've noticed, I watched extensive. I watched all those 3 innings again today. You see the fired up he is right there, the broken bat there as well. But what was interesting that he said, and this was actually quoted, I believe, in the San Francisco or maybe the Oakland paper, one of the Bay Area papers, East Bay. They were asking, why does he yell if he makes a bad pitch? He is demonstrative about it. You hear the announcers. They can't actually hear him because I'm actually there, but he's demonstrative when he misses a pitch. I believe he went 2-0. He threw the first pitch, missed away. Second pitch to Reddick, he missed high and away. It was badly missed. He screamed out something which is not happening, and it dials him back in. He was talking about that, and it's something you and I talked about, 8-9 weeks ago. His passion, his bulldog mentality, that whole emotional, that's something we didn't see from him 5 years ago. You didn't see a guy that was going to be as demonstrative as he is, and he was talking about that today, about how it gets him locked back in, knowing that that he missed the zone, he didn't have his mechanics, or he missed the spot, and he's upset about it. I mean, he is upset at himself, and he was saying that it catches a reset button for him, and that's something we did not see. Twins, circa 2013, 14-ish. We weren't seeing that, and you're seeing it now. And you're seeing a guy that goes out there last night or yesterday afternoon, 9-7 win, got the win in relief last night, stranded a pair of runners. That eighth inning, catcher's interference. It's a tough break. Runner gets aboard, and then there was a little dunk hit, first and second. Ground ball moves into second and third, but he gets a pair of strikeouts, saves the day. It's just great to see. But you're right, man. It's just once a heater, always a heater, and everybody seems to sort of be paying attention. I noticed there in the West today, a couple of the commentators and a couple of the writers were tweeting about him as well. That's something Luke Hughes has talked about too. This guy's a world star. In his own country, he hasn't really been paying attention. They need to now.
Yeah. And almost isn't the strikeout broken bat? That's almost the best piece of marketing you could ever hope for for Australian. I mean, that is just absolute marketing gold. Just the big strikeout upstairs and just the broken bat, and just just blew by him. And it's just you could not ask for a better piece of marketing, DB. And you couldn't ask for a better. Because it's got everything. It's got the theatrics, the drama, and it's got it all. And he's an excitable character, and it's interesting. I mean, following this week as well, there's been so much conversation around, the bat flips v if pitchers get a big strikeout, like pitchers show emotion or pitchers stride around with it. There's so much conversation around that at the moment as well. But it's that whole broken bat and strikeout was another good thing to see.
Yeah,
But DV,
go ahead.
I was going to say,
know you're going.
Let me ask you though. Just on a very much a baseball topic, where do you sit on bat flips and pitchers getting fired up?
I was an old school guy, and I think 2020's made me a anything goes guy. I think it's just because, it's 2020. I'm not a big fan of showing people up, but at the same time, you know what? If it's June 1st and you've won a walk-off game in front of 50,000, that's a pretty big deal. But if it's October 10th and you won a clinching game by walking off and you flip a bat, I'm a little more into that. I think the magnitude of the moment calls for it. I think the bigger the moment, I like the emotional side of things. For so long, baseball really, the most emotion you ever saw, you may have been too young to recall this, but Carlton Fisk was waving the ball fair down the left field line, trying to wave, and then you'd see a guy jump and around the bases. That was pretty much it. The old school black and white of the guys, the fans coming out of the stands. But there wasn't a lot of, it was about going about your business. I mean, even the shot heard around the world, the Giants played, that was really not there wasn't a lot of emotion there. They would always celebrate as a team, but I think the game's evolved. I think too, this is something I thought about this morning on my jog. I wonder how much of this excitement and flipping and is magnified the fact there's nobody there. That you're trying to fire yourself up and, hey, you know what? There's nobody here, but I just know I hit the heck of the ball. I wonder how much not having fans there has had the players overcompensate emotionally for what they're not getting, because it drives you. You know as well as I do.
Oh, yeah.
Our broadcasts sound better when there's 3,000 people there as opposed to 30. And the players are the same way. I wonder how much this is them firing themselves up. I don't know, but I used to have a bigger problem with it, not as much anymore. And besides, we're losing a lot of baseball audience because of the whole stiffness of it. Yeah. A younger generation needs the excitement of it. If a Tatis bat flip's going to do it, so be it. I mean, be it. I like the back and forth. I like where baseball, where it used to be they'd scream at each other from the dugout. I like they're doing that now. So it's all good. That's interesting. I think it's an interesting point that you bring up there. And, as far as the rest of the postseason series, Atlanta this afternoon, we'll go ahead and just tell you the Braves. If you won't give you the score, but the Braves did eliminate the Miami Marlins, so they're done. As here in a few minutes, there'll be the Dodgers and Padres, and then you've got, of course, the last couple innings of the Astros and Yankees right now. I'm missing somebody, I may be, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yankees Rays.
Yeah, Yankees Rays. That's coming on. That's actually coming on next, and then the Dodgers Padres will be the third game. It's a bit of a baseball. Good to see Luke out there. We're just talking about the greatness of Luke Hughes, and again, I go back to that point again. And Luke knows this. You want to engage the young fans, and if that means some more excitement. I mean, the Dodgers Padres last night was a late game here in the States, but there was a lot of excitement, a lot of back and forth, a lot of jawing, and it creates a lot more buzz around the water cooler on a Thursday morning than a normal ball game. So I'm all for it. But anyway, the elephant in the room, my friend, is the one that's going on currently with the ABL. Now, we thought this time last week that we would have some kind of announcement going forward on the ABL and where the ABL stood as far as Auckland, Brisbane, Adelaide, Bubbles, middle of nowhere, who knows? What we've seen so far, and what we've seen so far, first off, there's a piece, it's on Twitter. I would encourage you guys to go to Twitter and see the Auckland Tuatara, their Twitter page. And they've got an interview that was done, I believe, yesterday. Two of their executives, it's Reagan Wood, their CEO, and their media and communications manager, Dale Budge, who are interviewed there. And they cover several bullet points. And I know you had a chance to see this too this morning over there. You take what Mark Reedy told us last week, what we saw coming out of the newspaper in New Zealand, then you see what they're saying. I think it should, and we're going to give you Cam Vale's quote in a moment. Partner is there any way they play baseball in New Zealand? It ain't happening. It ain't happening.
Well, no, I don't think so. I'd say that one of the big takeaway headlines from the piece from the Tuatara is basically to send a team there. It's basically 200 grand. Let's call it what it is. So that's been the big concern. The big concern around, say, Brisbane and Adelaide and teams who are going there was like, how are they going to make money? Like, are they going to make, how are they going to recoup any of that 200 grand? And the answer is they're probably not going to recoup much of it. So, on top of that, and that 200 grand included in the Tuataras that they sort of laid out the plan that they had every individual player living basically in a motorhome for the year so they could do the quarantining.
Which I love the idea. It's a fun idea, and it may be some great reality TV. It reminds me of Mark Hamburger when Mark Hamburger lived in the motor. He lived in a caravan out in right field back in Melbourne back a few years ago.
That's what I was sort of thinking. I was thinking, does it double as a clubhouse as well? So do they all drive their vans to the outfield, and then that's their clubhouse as well? I don't know, but look, that was a little snafu. But moreover, it was the 200 grand per team coming over. So like that's you basically. I mean, let's be honest. You're basically asking your owner to probably at best take $100,000 loss. Maybe more, and whether is that feasible? I mean, I wouldn't want to personally be putting the bill for $200,000, and that's one thing. Secondly, there's obviously still the government issues for both countries, and it seems to be a little more relaxing. The big other elephant in the room is just yesterday here in Western Australia. Premier Mark McGowan announced that. Very unlikely that the border opens before April in the West. That's how they've done their budget now and all this sort of nonsense as well. So God knows why, but anyway, that's what he's decided to do. And look, and this is where I think baseball, I think a lot of other sports are actually going to get caught up. If you look at the border issue in WA and other parts of the world, US is no different. They've become so political that they're no longer really necessarily about. There is an element of community, safety and health and all that, but it's become bigger than that now. And they've all become political talking pieces. And in New Zealand, there's an election going on currently. In WA, there'll probably be an election back in there. Victoria, there's probably an election. So, the US is obviously an election going on. Like they've all become just so incredibly political that I think sports, particularly sports like baseball, like they are in such a risk of just falling into a political black hole because, like the governments just can't get out of the way. Like there doesn't seem to be, certainly from my part of the world in Western Australia, there does not seem to be a government willing to kind of go, hey, let's get everything back on track. Let's be part of Australia again, because the government here have decided that we're not even part of Australia anymore, which is bizarre. But anyway, I could have a whole separate show on my round about that. But so look at that. Baseball in New Zealand, DV, I would think is a no. And the real interesting part that I know you would have caught this as well. A couple of times, Regan Wood and Dale sort of mentioned, if we do anything at all. So there's really, and that's probably the first time we've heard, anyone, which has been quite an optimistic league. It's the first time we've said if, and many times they mentioned if we even do anything at all.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And they left that wide open. That's the first time we really heard that. I also gathered too, what I thought was interesting is that they have resigned to the fact that they're not going to play there on New Zealand soil. And that they are going to have to spend, and they mentioned 4 to 6 weeks in Australia. So that tells me this bubble is going to be a 4 to 6 weeks. Now, the original plan A was a longer season. It even began in Australia on the 18th of December-ish and ran 9 weeks? Is that what I got my math here for? Yep. About 9 weeks, something like that. 8-9 weeks. So it's a shorter season already. We're seeing that. The other thing I thought was interesting is that it appears that the league really wants to keep them engaged somehow, some way. They've gone as far, in the Twitter video they mentioned this, that Brisbane's offered them, Auckland that is, to supplant their roster with Australian players to help them out if they couldn't get some of their own New Zealand guys over. Maybe, for example, a guy's got a job and he can't come over. He can't spend 4 or 6 weeks away. Brisbane was going to try to find them extra players from their player pool to help supplement their roster. I thought that was interesting that it shows me the ABL and the member teams are really wanting to have a full competition this year with as many teams as possible. And I also think, too, the coverage that the team in New Zealand gets is probably the best in the league. And I the best of the non-Korean team, put it that way. And I think that also speaks volumes about why the ABL really needs to have the team from New Zealand sort of involved, I think.
No, I agree. But it looks, I think, DV, and, I could be totally wrong, but it sort of looks like, it looks like it's more likely to be an East Coast-based competition. You would say that Auckland, a very heavy question mark against them. You would think a very heavy question mark against Geelong Korea as well. And Perth, I guess it's up to whether if it is a 3 or 4 week bubble, I guess if they can justify it, then away they go. But, teams playing here, to me, seems an extreme challenge.
Yeah, let me give you what Cam Vale said, and we're going to come back to this. We'll circle back to what Cam said. We'll see if we can connect all the dots here with Mark Reedy, the folks in New Zealand, the fact that they've taken the week, one more week back. Now, what happened was that we told you this last week. We expected, there was a meeting. We do know this. I do know there was a meeting this week. I say a meeting, a Zoom meeting, a conference call, video conference call. They have pushed back the announcement for whatever we thought it may be, which may be either Adelaide or Brisbane, according to what the story goes, that they pushed it back one more week. Here's what Cam Vale told us this morning here at Talking Baseball Australia. Let me go ahead and read this to you guys here. The main delay, and I'll put this on the screen, Paul, so everybody can see it. Let me put it on the screen. The main delay is around COVID protocols, where best to locate the hubs and move teams. It's really the forward planning and the various government negotiations, as well as giving as much time to the fifth team and the GK issues. That's Cam Vale right there. That's his quote. I don't know if you heard that there, partner. Can you hear me there, bud?
I lost your audio, but I read the quote, so we're good.
Okay, good. Yeah, the main delay around the COVID protocols were the best to locate. The main delay is where the best to locate the hubs and move the team. So obviously, hubs, where the hubs are going to be, Adelaide and Brisbane. Let's just assume that's where it is, South Australia and Queensland. And what teams go where, who goes where. It's really a forward planning in the various government negotiations. That's probably going behind the scenes, negotiating with both South Australia and Queensland, as well as giving time for the fifth team and the Geelong Korea issues. Now, remember, GK was hoping to spend their time in New Zealand. So now, what does that do for the Geelong Korea situation? Are all bets off? Or, I throw this idea out there, a bit of a random one, but perhaps Geelong Korea is just Geelong this year, no Korea. I mean, perhaps the Geelong team is a hybrid team of Australian talent to round out the competition. I just throw that out there. Granted, you lose your Korean TV base, and it's huge, but I think that the end game is the league really wants to get those Korean TV eyes, which are the millions of baseball rabid fans watching. But if they can't get in, you're going to have to at least round out the competition with something, and you get a chance to get make a one-year team. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we sort of, I think we talked about 10 shows back. I mean, it could well be that the Perth Heat have a base in Geelong. Maybe they become the Perth Geelong Heat. I don't know for the season. But again, you sort of, you kind of looking at, you've got to look at the money side of it and whether it's feasible or not. As we know, like a lot of players baseball is not their full-time profession. So there's the economic factors there. But yeah, I mean, there's a facility sitting there, DV, and Victoria is in great shape as well. I mean, it's. I think today just they're down into almost a single digits in terms of COVID cases. So you would hope by sort of December they're well and truly on track to have sport back in the communities. But it could. Again, I'm a little like you. I think. I don't know. Maybe it's an opportunity to have that under 23s competition. We've looked a little bit. Maybe there is a sort of an under 23 squad out of Geelong or something like that. But I think it's a pretty good theory, DV.
Well, interesting to see. So again, just so you guys can get what we're talking about here in Talking Baseball Australia Live. My name's Dan Vaught. Paul Morgan joining us here on this Friday morning. What is it? Plan A, B? We're probably now. We've not announced a Plan B, but we're definitely to CD, wherever we're at now. As a matter of fact, and this is something Cam Vale told us, something that the folks in the Tour Tara office said as well. They went through something like 25 versions of Plan A already, just before they got to Plan A. So they're working on that. One more thing to note about this. Again, it appears there's going to be a hub of some sort. Who plays and how that schedule works out and when it starts, that's the other question. One question fans are going to have, what about contracts? Some of these contracts, especially in the Tour Tara case, for their big league guys, these guys that came over, they're flexible, depends on the situation. It looks like it's a case-by-case situation from what they're telling us, and that who can come to Australia and who can't, and what they can do quarantine-wise. Those are all part of the equation in this whole deal. So, and also one more note, and this is something you've talked about as well. You've got to remember the Tour Tara, for example, and this is the same problem Geelong Korea faces. You've got to get players in the country, coaches in the country. In this case, of course, Steve Mintz, Darren Bragg are both the two gentlemen that head up in the dugout there. Plus, you got to get those folks across the country to get these hubs. There's a lot of moving parts here, and it can all change. But I'm glad I'm not Cam Vale.
No, I think he would have aged. And look at it; it's so difficult as well because you're doing 90% of it, you're doing all of it, 100% of it by video conference and phone. So there's not really the opportunity for everyone to sit in a room and sort of throw around ideas. And I mean, we've all sat on enough Zoom calls for a lifetime in the past 9 months, and we all know that you just don't get the same level of interaction because someone talks and someone else is talking, and it's so you kind of trying to patch through these plans, but it's just not as easy as what it would be face to face. So and then, but yeah, look, I mean, my gut just tells me, DV, that, as the tide, as was mentioned earlier, as the tide turns around this issue from community health and safety to politics, I think that is the one major hurdle that baseball is going to, and then it's we know, and you've said it many times, and we've said there are people, Australians, stranded around the world. Now, are they going to grant foreign players coming in to play when they won't even grant people who are citizens to come back to the country? I mean, there's people in the east coast of Australia. I mean, Luke Hughes, one of them, who lives in Victoria. He'd have a hell of a time right now trying to get back to WA. Yeah. So you kind of the political storm that it can all create around a bunch of elections as well is just. I think that's the road that I think the whole thing becomes a real challenge around. But
what's amazing I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, no one knows political spins more than the great US at the moment, DV.
Yes, well, and I was going to throw this out there. This happened today in Texas, okay, or yesterday in Texas. The governor came out. We've been at 25% capacity at pubs and restaurants, since back in June. Well, they've opened up bars to 50%, but here's the deal. Depending on what city you're in and county you're in, it may be different. For example, we live in Dallas County, and the local judge that kind of runs the law of the land of this county has said, no, you're going to stay at 25, 30%. Bars will not be allowed to go to 50, or pubs 50%. Now, in a place like Lubbock, where my daughter is out in school, which is 300 miles west of here, they're all for 50% or more. And it depends on where you live. It's become political about who is in charge at each city, each burg, and that's what's become of this whole thing. And it's bleeding down to sport. We're seeing here, we're going to have World Series here a couple of weeks from now, or a week or so from now, and there'll be people there. Yesterday, the Miami Dolphins were told, hey, you can have all your fans and fill up the stadium for the NFL, but Dolphins ownership said, nope, we're not going to do that. You've got every place is different in this country, which is no different than Australia, New Zealand, you name the country. It's all very similar, and it gets political because Florida is a state that's been opened up for a longer period of time. They want fans there. California, you couldn't get a fan of anything. They're still not playing college football out there yet. So, I mean, it all depends. It's all become so political, and you're right, partner. I will give you one silver lining. I do know for a fact, and this is something that TBA exclusive that you and I both know, that I'm going to use the Heat, for example, do know that they've offered possible import contracts to join the club for this year. What that tells me is it may not look the same this year. It may not, it will, we know it won't look the same. It won't be the same competition, but there'll be some kind of competition involving some number of teams playing somewhere in Australia. I know that's a wide answer, but we're seeing players sign. And as we jump into the hot stove section of the show, we're seeing guys sign. And I think that should be reassuring for Heat fans, Aces fans, Bandit fans, whoever fans. Your teams are still making moves, which tells me, and I remember this in the American Association. The association eventually dried up making moves because they saw the handwriting on the wall. It leads you to believe there's no handwriting on the wall. They just don't know what that's going to look. There's handwriting on the wall. What it looks like is anybody's guess. So let's jump into the hot stove. If I kind of talked this into the handwriting section there, but let me bring up the hot stove there. This is a guy that I thought about this gentleman today at length, and Ulrich Bajowski. I think probably the highest upside of any young Australian player in some time, position player in some time, maybe since Luke Hughes. This guy has got a huge upside. He has been a success at every stop. But if the Heat are going to compete against the likes of some of these mega rosters that have been put together, it's going to start with guys. We've already seen Alex Hall and Robbie Glendenning signed during the show last week, basically. Your young guys are going to produce, and this guy they're going to have from the get-go in Bojo.
Yeah, Bojo, and you're right, DV. One of the highest upsides for sure. I mean, he's got power, he's got speed, he's got, he's obviously affiliated with the Detroit Tigers as well. He's a guy that can hit. I mean, and he can hit 300, 350 for you at that ABL level, and he can bunch over a couple of dingers as well and get things going. But we love him. We've loved him since he's hard to not like, Bojo. He's one of the nicest kids in all of baseball, and this is and we've talked about that. And obviously, we're a bit more skewed. Historically, we've been a bit more skewed to the Heat than any other ABL team, and. This is no shock to get the Bajowski, the Glendennings, the Alex Hall. Imagine you'll get the Tim Kennellys, the Dan Schmitz, and these guys come through as it trickles through. But love this guy, DV, and I still think he's my. Is he almost the pick for the next Australian in the show, Ulrich?
I think he's got to be. I mean, this is a guy. His numbers in the ABL, I think. If he hadn't played as much as he did early in his career, we saw that power numbers early. Because of the Tigers' connections, he's not played as much. But when he's played in North America and when he's played internationally, he's really contributed. Drove in 9 last year in 33 ball games. That didn't sound like a lot, but remember it's a short season over there. Still 22 years old, 116 regular season games in the ABL alone, but he's also been part of the under 18, under 23s national team as well. I think he's your next step up as well. Don't underestimate this. He was an all-star in the Midwest League. That goes a long way when you're minor league all-star. I think that's very big. He's definitely a guy the Tigers have got high hopes for. 224 minor league games in the Midwest League, and then now would be sledded if he would have played high A this year, assuming, or maybe a chance at crack double A midway through the season if there had been an MILB season. But 10 homers in 2019 at West Michigan, and he's on the rise, and he's only going to get better. And what I could be amazed about him when we saw him, which have been last January for me, and I love the guy. I love his family. He's just great people. But standing next to him and talking to him, he was maturing. This is a guy that 2 or 3 years ago was very kind of in awe really in awe where he was. He wasn't quite sure his surroundings. He was kind of learning as he was going. We talked about Liam that way in his first few years in the big leagues. Ulrich was sort of a little bit of, hey, what have I got myself into? Just kind of wide-eyed about things. But he's a different young man now. At 22 years old, he's spent some time in the minors. He's ridden the buses. He knows what it takes to get there. He's been in Tiger Town long enough. He seems like and he's also got filled out. he's a menacing species. You know, he's a big looking guy behind that batting cage, and watch him take cuts. And I just think his evolution as a ball player, as a young man, it's sky's the limit. I think he's that next guy, position player wise, who you're going to see going to get a crack at the big leagues. It may be a couple years, and and maybe his growth is slowed a bit because of this whole COVID thing in the States, but he's got that chance, and I love having him. So let's fly along here. I mentioned Robbie Glendening. I thought I had some video of Robbie here, partner, but I don't. I thought I edited cover video this morning here or over here, but Robbie, again, if the Heat are going to compete against some of these, I call these super lineups that are kind of developing between Melbourne, Brizzy, Adelaide, Auckland, you name it, Sydney. I mean, there's some good players there. You're going to need Robbie Glendening, Ulrich Bajowski, Alex Hall, Jess Williams, those 4 young men, and to contribute. And this is a guy, Glendening, who's done that. He's also further along as a prospect at AA level than Ulrich was, but he's made his way in North America, still over there right now. But if you're going to compete, you need these 3 pieces, Hall, 4. We can throw Williams. You need those 4 pieces. It's big to get him back as well.
Yeah, and just throw one more bit on Bajowski before we move on for him. So last year you saw, of course, he flip-flopped a lot, DH'd a lot, didn't spend as much time. Was sort of the odd man out with Jordan Kazar in right field. I know that part of his contract negotiation, if you want to mention that this year, is he wants to play in the field a lot more. So expect Bojo out in the field a lot more this year, which is great for everyone as well. But he plays tomorrow. I'll get to see him play tomorrow night. Bojo, he made the State League switch from the Korean Cats to the Morley Eagles. So I think he's in action tomorrow night when I'm down at the ballpark. So it'll be. And
too, the Tigers have made a call. Kevin Hooker has probably already called the Heat and said, "Hey, this guy needs at bats. He needs place to play in the field." That's already happened. I mean, it doesn't shock me at all that that's probably been the case. Good morning, Spider. Good to see Bowser out there as well. Here on Talking Baseball Australia Live, baseball's best mate, Dan Vaughn and Paul Morgan with you. Talking the hot stove here, but talking about Ulrich and really all these guys, they're going to get at bats and they're going to get in the field. Robbie Glendening is going to play your middle infield, probably your shortstop. He's going to be one of your key cogs in your lineup. Bojo is going to play in the field every day. He's going to be out there because they need to get him out there. He needs because again, what you got to remember, guys like him lost an entire season development in North America. He's got to get out there.
Yeah, I think reading between the lines with what the Heat plan is, I know you said Bowser's out there. I think the thought is that your Bowser's used as first base DH as well. Then probably have Jess Williams at second base. Probably have Robbie at shortstop. Tim Kennelly in center. Right field, Ulrich Bajowski. So you just have, and I think this is where the Heat have such an advantage over other teams. They almost have a ready-made. They're probably the only team really that have a ready-made ABL team could roll out now and be quite competitive and successful.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of other teams now are heavy. Well, fair to say, Adelaide's got a lot of people in Australia and whatnot, but they are one of the very few teams who still have such a strong core of local talent that basically can fill every position. But
let me ask you. This is on this same subject. Let's just say, for example, that this whole bubble system, as they go back to the bubble, let's say it all turns out where Auckland has to come over, but they can't get all those big leaguers in. Some of these high name guys just can't get in because the government doesn't let them. Settling your face with what imports can get in, can't get in. But it is an advantage for Adelaide and for the Heat to have those young Australians you can basically field a team right now. That's a huge advantage. I'm not saying those other teams can't do it. I think every state, every city can do it. But you do have that advantage. That could bode well for those two clubs.
100%. And you think right now, if all the import contracts get blown up, like if you can't, by that I mean if you can't get players into the country, like all of a sudden, we've been so gung-ho on the Aces for such a long period of time, and all of a sudden you go, well, boy, all of a sudden they look a little thin. But it's and the Heat, to their credit, and to the development and the high performance programs, and this goes from Andy Kyle, then Ken McGee down at Darling Range to the high performance program that they have, and the guys at Diamond Fitness and Johnny Ogilvy and Dean White and all these guys who do such a great job at strength and conditioning the local talent. They're in a good spot. But this guy as well, DV, I love this guy as well. Of course, part of the American Association as well, Sam Street. But
yeah, I want to play something for you guys. Yeah, we'll move to the Aces now, but Sam Street, a guy that I really got a chance to know over the States. He's one of two former T-Bones who are playing for the Aces. Josh Tolles, of course, is now with the Phillies organization, and of course Sam Street signing with the Aces, coming back. I had a really good conversation with Sam at the ABL Championship Series. He was he pitched some, but he'd come off injury in 2018. He was part of the 2018 T-Bone Championship team. After the Pirates released him, he was snatched up immediately. Huge bullpen piece. He's a real bullpen piece. That's going to be a situational matchup nightmare because he comes at you 3/4 over the top. He's going to be a nice weapon for Alan D. San Miguel, the bullpen. 2.68 in 9 appearances, 1-0 record over his course of the last a couple of years in the ABL. And D-San will be fired up to having. Street, though, former Pirates farmhand, reaching high A. I want to give you guys a treat. I'm going to play something for you guys. First off, let me bring this down for you. I'm going to give you guys a little treat. This is, sorry about that. Let me bring this down. This is something I put together. Sam, this is how much I loved about. Now, I have to set the scene. I can't play the song for you because if I play it, they'll mute us. But
Facebook will kick us off.
Yeah, what I used to do, though, and we have on our radio broadcast in Kansas City. Hi, this is Sam Street of the Kansas City T-Bones. You're tuned to T-Bones Baseball, that kind of deal. And usually I'd put a song behind it. In his case, I always would put great Australian songs behind it. And it had a great NXS behind us because I love NXS. You know this. But I can't play that part, but I'll play you. This is what Sam would do for the T-Bones. And I love it. I'm going to bring this up for you guys here as I will play this for you guys. So here we go.
Hi, this is Sam Street of your Kansas City T-Bones. Don't miss a minute of the action all season long on the T-Bones Broadcast Network.
Love it. Love hearing Sam. And Sam was always a big part of my broadcast, and I loved it. And I would usually go right into a little NXS or some Midnight Oil or you name it. I'd play one of my favorite Aussie hits and always be from Sam Street, but always good to see Sam. That's a nice piece for those Aces. Yes, and he's an important signing for Melbourne. He definitely is. Stuart, you're right. And I think one thing Alan D. San Miguel mentioned, and it's something I've seen from them, this guy, because of his matchup ability, he can face righties or lefties. He also can throw 3/4 sidearm. He can also come over the top. He varies his arm angles. And as a reliever, when you get a guy like that comes in, and you've been seeing a guy over the top the whole time, all you've been seeing over the top, suddenly a guy comes in, gives you 3/4 action, and you got to pick the ball up a different place. He can be murder in those situations. He made a living in the minor leagues. I can tell you right now, as an ace and as a T-Bone, and really in his career, a matchup guy in the bullpen. This is the kind of guy that's going to be huge for them going forward. But welcome back to the league, and he was there a little bit last year, but good to have Sam Street back, and I'm sure T-Bones fans are happy.
Well, they would be, but and look, as we said, DV, like if everything went to plan and all the players came in and whatnot, I mean, the Aces have put together such a great team, and they continue, and that's the one thing that I guess continues to amaze us about the Melbourne Aces, Dan, and we've been on a bit of a love fest of the Aces for a little while now, but every time they do something, it's just the right move, and they're just making the right moves, and they've got great brains in that organization, and it's no reason why it wouldn't be.
No, this guy right here too. They picked up member of the Israeli national team, but this is a guy in Blake Galion. This guy is a 13-year minor league international player. He's played all over the world, of course, in WBC competition with Team Israel, which is an up-and-coming team. He is from the West Coast, has been as high as AAA, played the Dominican Republic, played in Mexico, was an Atlantic League MVP for Butch Hobson's club a couple years back, who now manages the Chicago Dogs of the American Association. Of course, Hobson, the former Red Sox and Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback. This guy, MVP, he was actually MVP in a couple different independent leagues. This guy right here, if I mentioned that guys that could be made for this league, this is a guy that maybe you've never heard of, but could be in the MVP talk without ever hearing this guy. This guy has got the resume that just oozes success in the ABL, a long history of numbers over his career.
And what I love about this again, DV, if you, and I have not done this exercise, but if anyone does it, that, you know, if you dissect somewhere, you're going to find where, you know, the Justin Huber intersected with him, or Mick Wern, or Luke Hughes, or Alan D. San Miguel, or so. And this is why the Aces are putting together such a good ball club, because I guarantee if you picked it all apart, somewhere along the lines, you know, someone's roommate, someone's teammates, somewhere, you know, they've got such almost those tentacles out in the US now, based off, you know, the Justin Hubers, Luke Hughes, Alan Dean, San Miguel, Mick Wern, all these guys, that it comes as no surprise to me anymore, DV.
Yeah, he also, Galion also was the American Association batting champ back in 11 and 12 with Lincoln, and hit 406 in 2011 with the Lincoln Salt Dogs. Been the Dodgers,
That's
Blue Jays. Yes, 406.
I mean, I was going to say, if you're hitting 406 in the American Association, you know, you're probably going to hit 450 in the ABL if you're in the same system.
Wow. This is a great signing, a great move for the Aces, no doubt. I'm actually putting this on the screen for you guys as I do that, but it's a great move. Also, we mentioned, and you just mentioned it, and they just keep doing what they do. One of my favorite names, Gunnar Kynes, coming over from the Giants to the Aces. This guy, left-handed starter last year, was the ace of that Giants ball club. 3-2, 1.50, a lefty, made 9 starts, struck out 42 in 42 innings, had a whip of a 1.17. That's a walks, hits, innings, pitch ratio. That's getting it done, sir. Allowed 1 run and 7 1/3 in the playoffs as the Giants came up short. But this is the rich getting richer. Now you've added Sam Street in the bullpen. You've added a veteran bat in Galion, and then now you're going to add Gunnar right here as a starter. Dang it, those Aces just keep getting better, don't they, mate?
They've just, you know, if you were to rewind the clock, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, of course, remember they had the ownership that sort of came in, that was going to move into Albert Park, and then, you know, that all mysteriously sort of it all went away. And but now this team, new ownership, you know, new structure internally, they can't miss a beat. And how is the best team in the league who defeated this team in the championship series, taken their best, you know, taken their best, one of their best pieces, and made their ball, and make no mistake, as I say, if everything goes ahead as planned, I mean, the Aces are a mile ahead of any other team, talent-wise, at the moment. A mile ahead of any other team.
Yes, by far. And as I mentioned, and Stuart just said, Stuart's right on. He says that 12 players from Lancaster's 2018 team to play. Lancaster definitely, if I can just go ahead and tweet that for you guys. There we go. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. Not tweet it, actually put it on the screen for you. Their reach, and we mentioned this 3 or 4 weeks ago with Mick Wern, and when they came over to the States, they got contacts in the American Association, the Frontier League, the Atlantic League. They got their, as you said, their tentacles everywhere. And it's in the relationships I mentioned with Alan and with Luke, those 2 guys, plus all the guys that have played before them. You mentioned Justin as well. These are guys that have contacts. Their virtual Rolodex for baseball is deep, and I guarantee you, I'm telling you, if I had to put together a team right now and I had to go up against Melbourne and know what they're doing and what they're doing about procuring players, I'd have my work cut out for me. And as many contacts as I have, it'd be I would be getting my tail kicked because they're that good at what they do. I mean, it's a complete effort what they do, and it's phenomenal what they're doing, their culture.
I will say this, though, and we've spoken about it so many times about the Sydney Blue Sox and trying to get them, you know, Sydney being obviously the biggest population market in Australia, Melbourne being, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, the sporting capital of Australia. This team, if they're dominant, if they go on a 4 or 5 year dominant run, like, I actually think it's a really good thing for baseball in Australia too, because all of a sudden, they're probably their two biggest competing sports, or certainly they've got the Melbourne Stars and the Melbourne Renegades in the big bash that baseball competes against. But if this Aces bunch, if they can be really special for 4 or 5 years, I think that just does wonders for baseball in Australia, because all of a sudden in the market, big market, that
you're
they
on
are,
to something there.
big meat. Yeah.
Hey, let me piggyback off that, okay? Because I think you're right onto something. Where is the game most popular right now in the country? Well, the Heat have not won, as Robbie was quoted in the piece in the ABL, but the ABL piece, about wanting to get back there. It's been too long, but a couple years, and the Heat want to get back there. Brisbane won all those championships in a row. Those are two ends of the country where baseball's been huge. You're looking at Melbourne now with their championship, what they've grown. Baseball's really, those three markets are huge. Remember, Canberra had their little run as well.
Yeah.
I think you're onto something. The more success, I got no problem with the Aces winning a couple more titles in a row. I want to see it spread around a bit. I'd love to see Sydney do well, because all that's going to do is strengthen each market. As what we've talked about, it goes back to the whole, you're only as strong as your weakest link. If all 8 of your clubs are financially viable, competitive, all those things that you need to be successful, it's going to make the league that much better, that much more appealing to international TV eyes, sponsorship eyes, whatever, and that much more appealing domestically to those things as well. So I'm with you. I think it's a great thing that the Aces are doing what they're doing. And if the dynasty switches every couple of years, so be it. But look where the game was most popular. The West, far east, and right square in the middle in Victoria. And I think that you're right on. You're dead on, man.
And of course, historically with the Melbourne, the Waverley Reds and the Melbourne Monarchs and all these teams that used to play. If they can get, and this is the end, where their stadium is not necessarily miles out of the city, but with that dominance, if that dominance creates an opportunity to move into an Albert Park or something like that, right in the core of downtown of Melbourne, it's only a good thing. So I think, for anyone who ever gets upset about it, if the Aces win the next 4 or 5 championships in a row, big picture, if you fast forward 10, 15 years, that's a very good thing for Australian baseball. And this team on screen as well, that they need to be good as well. The reality is, as everyone said, it's a lower tier sport, baseball in Australia, and you need Melbourne and Sydney being really, really good, strong clubs.
Got to get us there. Let me go on the screen there together. That face you're seeing right there, that is the face of Cam Gibson, who was signed by the Sydney Blue Sox. Blue Sox have made some pretty good moves as well, and this kind of coincides with what they did last week as well, where they picking up veteran talent. What is interesting about this gentleman right here? He's the son of 2-time World Series champion, and also, you may recall, one of the most famous home runs ever hit at Dodger Stadium, if not one of the top 5 home runs ever hit in Major League Baseball in the postseason, when his father, Kirk, took Dennis Eckersley deep to right field in the World Series in 1989, I believe it was. I can tell you where I was, what fraternity party I was at, and how many keg stands I did that night watching this play out in 1989. But his father is Kirk Gibson. Of course, Kirk, the father, went to Michigan, was a former Michigan Wolverine footballer and baseballer. Cam went to Michigan State, the big rival in the Big Ten, and he's a Tigers farmhand, and he will just a guy that's been at a high level of minor leagues, left-handed hitter, 241, 42 homers, 217 RBIs, the minors, playing Double-A last year, the Erie Seawolves, where he was last year. He also was invited to spring training earlier in the year with 2 for 3 driven in. They're at Tiger Town with the big club, 4th year out of Michigan State. But he'll be part of the Sydney Blue Sox. And the Blue Sox, this is this is the kind of, I say it every time, these AAA, AA guys who played at a high level, these guys do well in the ABL. It's a good signing here.
Yeah, the Blue Sox, 6 New York Mets as well. They signed the other day, and
I was going to get to that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, they're a team. they are obviously Manny Ramirez as well, but they're heavily reliant on things going their way border-wise. I mean, they're probably they're almost now DV at top of the table, highest risk teams of not panning out so well if the border ain't too friendly. But boy, they're making noise, and again, that's what we just said about the Aces. The Blue Sox need to make noise. I mean, it's a good storyline. Having Gibson's son in is a good storyline. It was no different to when George Brett's son was playing down at not playing part of the front office in the Aces. The Aces a few years ago.
Jackson Brett.
They're good stories. So.
Yeah,
but I mean, before I start your thunder about the Mets, we're
gonna get that. I didn't have that in the rundown. I do want to touch on that. I want to also give you Sam Holland with the Brisbane Bandits, who is a guy that's been a mainstay in the ABL as well. We talk about names that are recognized. He's a member of the national team. Should be counted on in the national team pecking order this year as well, trying to make the Olympics in Tokyo. 26-year-old. He's still very, very young in baseball years. 83 regular season games, 6 ABL seasons with the Bandits, 17 appearances last year. He has had a 3.86. Also was a member of the team, national team of the Premier 12. Got his first call-up in that Japan series 2 years ago, but right-hander. And this is a guy that you're getting. We talked about with Mark Reedy getting the band back together. It's very important to get this guy getting some innings going forward, especially if you figure he's going to be a part of the national team in the spring, or the spring in the States, be the latter summer, early fall in the Southern Hemisphere.
Well, that's right, and that's the other part is that we sort of forget about in this whole season. In some ways, is the Olympics are still scheduled for next year in Japan. Australia, albeit not an enormous certainty, there's still a chance to play in that tournament as well. So it's so important because we don't know what's going to happen with the Australian team qualifiers as well. So that's probably all up in the air as well. It's so important for these guys to get reps as well because there's still a chance, DV, that they get to the Olympics.
Yeah, there's still very much a chance. I mean, and you don't know how that's going to pan out. And I can see, I've read this, I've heard this. It's possible that the Olympics may expand. There's a rumor going where the Olympics have talked about expanding the field for Tokyo because of the fact there may not be enough qualifying opportunities because they just can't get these qualifying tournaments in. That's a possibility as well. This is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out there as well. But what I want to do too, and we're going to do this, I have a pretty good idea who the Rays will be sending to Perth, and I want to break down their prospects and the Mets prospects in a future show. Perhaps we'll do that on the back end of next week's show or the week after. But I don't want to gloss over the fact that the Mets are sending players to Sydney, which is good. You need those relationships. Major League Baseball has taken over. In case you missed this topic, they've taken over control of the minor leagues. So now the minor leagues are no longer controlled by the MILB out of Tampa, St. Petersburg. They're now relocating that office to New York City. There's actually going to be an MLB minor league office. They're going to restructure the minor leagues. It's all going on right now. You may have seen this as well. There was a Supreme Court ruling that came down 2 days ago, getting back pay and more pay for minor leaguers as well. So it's a constantly evolving situation. But the fact is, the ABL must and needs to continue to have relationships with big league clubs. And the Mets, a team out of New York, that's going to be good. Got to be good to have them in your largest market in the country. So we'll get to that. I do want to get to that, and also because I think it's important to know who the prospects are coming over, and there's some good prospects coming over. Final thoughts, mate. What do we miss? What did I miss? Did we miss anything?
No, I think we've covered it all, DV. So we're back on the road, and next week I think we're both in our home studios, which will be nice. But no, it's look. I expect this. Next week's show should be a great show, DV, because in theory by then, there's probably a bit more of a idea of what's going to happen this year, and maybe it's not the final thing that happens, but it's more of I would suggest it's a more formal announcement about a new structure.
Yes, and in case you missed on the top of the show, we did talk about the Liam Hendriks performance last night, but we also talked about the the New Zealand situation, where New Zealand had the Tuatara had a Twitter video out today on YouTube that talked about their future playing in a bubble. So I'm kind of recapping here on Talking Baseball Australia Live, baseball's best mate, as we close this thing out. I do want to give you guys one more time the shot of Cam Vale's quote before we shut things down, because we expected the announcement this week. We didn't get it. We expect it next week. Cam Vale has already told us he will come on the show next Friday morning. We'll get an insight into how plan whatever it is goes. We should have a pretty good idea next week, and we hope to have Cam on next week. So another wait and see, mate. But
wait and see.
I may be swimming to Australia.
You never know, DV. You could be. You might have to just come via the Cape down via the river, and I'll pick you up at the vineyard. So he'll.
I'll be there, mate.
So,
I'll be there.
I'll be there. But,
well, I'll let you go back to the holiday with the family, my friend, and much love to you guys, the family, and we'll see you next week, mate, on Talking Baseball Australia Live. How about it?
We'll do. Thanks all. Thanks for tuning in.
There he is, Paul Morgan, folks, joining us from Margaret River, just about 2 hours south of Perth in beautiful Western Australia. I'm going to give you guys this quote one more time. So, again, we expected the announcement of the competition to come out this week. It did not. But Cam Vale reached out, and I reached out to him, and he actually gave us this quote. I'll read it to you one more time. We close things out. The main delay is around COVID protocols. We're the best to locate the hubs and move teams. It's really the forward planning and various government negotiations, as well as giving as much time to the fifth team and GK issues. And that's from Cam Vale, CEO of Baseball Australia. So there is the news. There's really no news, but again, I encourage you to go to the Twitter page of the Auckland Tuatara, see their YouTube video. You'll get a pretty good insight. If you piece that together with Mark Reedy's comments last week, the owner of the Brisbane Bandits, and really Adam Dobbs' comments from Sydney a couple of weeks ago, it's all starting to make sense. I think you're seeing where this thing's going, and probably 2 hubs or 1 super hub, probably 2, in South Australia and in Queensland. Again, a big thank you to Paul Morgan, my broadcast partner. He's the best. Hope he enjoys his holiday day with the family down the beautiful Margaret River. A big thanks to Cam Vale, Stuart, and Harold. Good day, Harold, as well. Donna, good to see you out there. William, Spider, Bowser, Luke Hughes, GMW, WD-40, all you folks who stopped by. And if you stop by to watch us later, hey, make sure you hit that like button. Tell us you like us on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook. Baseball's best mate, Talking Baseball Australia. We do this for you every Friday. We're growing our coverage, keep getting going. We're going to keep coming to you, keep coming with you with the best coverage we can possibly do on both sides of the globe, not just in Australia, but also North America, as we keep coming away on Talking Baseball Australia. All right, time to let it close. I hate it. Much love. I say it every time. Virtual hugs. Let's be better tomorrow than we were today. Show some love, show some empathy, and hey, let's look forward to some great baseball in Australia coming to you very, very soon. We'll see you next Friday, 7 a.m. in the West. Adjust your timepiece. 6 p.m. in North America, Central Time Zone. Thursday night, Friday morning in Australia. Move it around as you see fit. Much love. We'll see you next week. From Paul Morgan, hey, thank you for watching us on Talking Baseball Australia Live, baseball's best mate. Let's roll the close.
Some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root.